Hi, my name is Tara, and I did the book How I Discovered Poetry by Marilyn Nelson. The illustrations are by Hadley Hooper, and it was copyrighted in 2014. And this book is a book about Marilyn Nelson's childhood while her father was in the military in the 1950s. It is written in 50 unrhymed sonnets, which means there are only 14 lines each and approximately 10 syllables per line. They don't have to rhyme, and they don't always have to have the traditional volta or turn from one thought to another thought in the middle. Basically, this book is a nonfiction book, and even though it is a true story, some of the memories may have been foggy, and so she just made up some of the parts to finish her book. This whole book is what kinds of adventures and people she met in her life since she had to travel all the time due to her dad being in the military. The title of this book came when she was in a class one day with her teacher, Mrs. Purdy, reading from her desk. The next day, Mrs. Purdy gave Marilyn a poem that she had chosen for her to read specifically. She was the only colored girl in her class, and Marilyn was smiling while she was reading the poem, and when she was finished reading the poem, her classmates stared at the floor. The power of the words silenced the children as they walked out of the school to the buses. From then on, poetry has been a part of Mrs. Nelson's life. When I first started reading this book, I was a little unsure as to how this was a poem. I knew that poems didn't have to rhyme, but since being a little girl, we always were taught that poetry mostly rhymed. I have never read a book full of sonnet poems before in my life, but the more I read, the more fascinated I became because it was like I was sucked into her life. She was more fascinated. The more I read, oh my goodness, she was telling the story, but I felt like I was her. I think that children would enjoy this book because it is a true story about someone's life, and I believe that children will relate to it if they have a parent or a loved one in the military, as it talks about their struggles and their successes. Her father was the first colored person in the Air Force. I think children will latch on to that and want to read the book and be more engaged into this book. I think the life lesson for this book is that poetry helps people to find themselves and remember their lives and to tell stories in ways that no one else can. Poetry, to me, is simply amazing. For the activity I chose to do, depending on the age group of the children, was a word search with poetry terms. I know my children are 7 and 9, and they love doing word searches. And so I found this website that has word searches that would be poetry terms, but you can choose which age group you want to use. So I think that it would be good for any age group. And so that is what the activity is I chose for this particular book. Thank you.